Hello and welcome everybody to the grandest tier list that I've done so far, okay? This tier list is gonna be going over every single artifact in Heroes of Might and Magic 3, okay? It's gonna be glorious, it's gonna be great. I'll be talking over the reasons why I think they belong, where I place them, but of course, everything's subjective. You might like, prefer, and use some artifacts more than I do, and you might respect some things over others compared to me. Different sort of opinions is fine. We can share them in the comments. We can share why. This is not like the definitive list. This is my list, okay? So, let's get right into it. There's a lot to go over. First up, we have the Admiral's Hat. Now, okay, I don't play a lot of water templates at all. Like, the only times I play with water is when I play the campaign and there's water, okay? But when you do play there, Admiral's Hat is really good. It doesn't even spawn in maps where you don't have water, so it's not like a downside in those templates, so it doesn't lose ranking from being useless in most situations. And when you do have water and it spawns, you're actually pretty happy to see it. It's a pretty decent artifact. It's also it's one of the... It basically enables you to play water templates really effectively, and it removes much of the downtime there. It's a really, really, really good combination artifact. It's made up of the Admiral's Hat and the Necklace of Ocean Guidance. Really good combo RT. I would put it low A tier, in my opinion. Then next up we have the Ambassador Sash. This item reduces the surrender cost of your units, okay? And that is a pretty useless effect, okay? You don't usually use that. It's a pretty niche scenario that you can actually use it. The main draw factor for this item is that it's one of the 3 pieces that you need to complete the Diplomat's Cloak. And that makes it not completely useless. Not completely useless is going to be our C tier, and Ambassador Sash goes there first. Next up is the Amulet of the Undertaker. 5% extra Necromancy for Shadow of Death, 2.5% for Horn the Abyss. We're going to be going over the Horn the Abyss version, so it's not that impactful. It occupies a pretty contested item slot, the next slot. You want the Pendant of Courage there, you want the Speed Necklace there, you want the +3 all stats there, something better. So it's a kind of an early game necro item. So not only is it pretty much exclusively early game, it's also pretty exclusively necro. Like 2 niche things both piled together, it's not that good. It is C tier. Next up is the Angel Feather Arrows. 15% extra damage when you have archery. And by the way, this 15% is actually adds in a positive way, in a favorable way. Hey, kitty. So what this means is that... Sorry. What this means is that the 15% extra damage for your archery is not like 15% of the 50% of the archery that you get. It's actually plus 15% to the 50%. So with Angel Feather Arrows and archery, you're going to be doing 65% extra damage on your rangers. So it's a more favorable way to calculate. Still, it's not that impactful. It is like getting free attack bonus. But then again, free attack, on an uncontested item slot that goes in the miscellaneous slot after all, it's pretty good. I would say it's B tier. Next up, we have the granddaddies of all items, the most notorious, the most iconic combination artifact of them all, the Angelic Alliance. Okay, glorious. Put it in S tier, ship it, pray all your units, never miss morale, ludicrous stats, very great. The chase item of almost every single game. Next up is Angel Wings. Now, you see, to remove the rain penalty on the main hero is not that hard. You can expert fly. Usually you have air magics, usually you have the spell in late game, but getting it this item is going to make every single one of your heroes that actually gets chained to you be able to fly and not suffer rain penalty. It is such a huge boost in efficiency, especially in the early mid game. It is notoriously good. One of the best utility relics. Now, sometimes you don't really want utility, you want power, but even then, you're happy to find this. It is a very, very high tier relic. Wonderful item. Lets everybody fly. At expert level, by the way, so you basically remove all terrain penalty, and you can move over to rain without any penalties whatsoever either. It is wonderful. Next up is the Armageddon's Blade. Now, this is not available in most templates. There's only some meme templates that end up being able to use it. You know, it's available in campaigns, certain maps, and meme templates. Okay? So it doesn't seem much use. But at what it sees use, it's amazing! All the way! One of the most fun items, okay? Notoriously, there's Veteran Cross, which I host some 8 FFAs in. You know, 8-player free-for-all. Usually we do like 1-2 minute timers, really ridiculous, fast-paced. And if you get Armageddon's Blade, you're gonna have a ton of fun. And, you know, sometimes we do. Very nice item. I would put it solidly in S tier. Then, next up, Armor of the Damned. Funnily enough, despite this not being the grand go-to combo RT, I would say in online PvP matches, this is far more influential than Angelic Alliance. And let me explain why. The reason is that it's comprised of 4 very common artifacts that are pretty easy to find and usually get them. You know, not always all 4 of them. Usually get like 3 and then you're caught blind for like the last one for like the entire game and you never get the actually easy item. But when you do, you actually get to use it early and you get to use it a lot. And what this item does, by the way, for anyone that is not aware, at the start of the fight, it uses Expert Curse, Expert Slow, Expert Misfortune, and Expert Sorrow. I believe those are the 4 on your opponents at the start of combat. And this makes all your side heroes be able to take every single fight on auto combat for free. Now, that isn't like, not every single fight, but most of them, you know? In reasonable level. So this item is solidly S tier. It is so good. Actually, I would put it above Angelic Alliance in terms of actual usefulness throughout the game. And also, its ease of access is also like another big selling point over the Angelic Alliance. Despite not being quite as iconic as the Angelic Alliance still. Next up, we have some of the simpler RTs. Back to non-combo ones, huh? We have the Armor of Wonder. Armor of Wonder is actually such a useful, good item. I'm always very happy to see this. Whenever I pop one in the Black Tower, in a churchyard, it's got about like some imps on the road. It's so good. It does everything. It doesn't do a lot of everything, but it does everything. It is +1 to all stats, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but from a small artifact, it's actually really exciting. You get to have, usually if you're making a Might Hero, then this item doubles your mana, doubles your casting, you know, doubles the duration of your spells in the early game, and also gives you like quite a bit of might, and it does so for every single hero that you chain the steer. It is a very good artifact to have in the early game. I love it so much. And the fact that it's really easy to access, the fact that it commands into Angelic Alliance, there's many things telling this artifact to be really good. Also, another important thing about artifacts is that if they can spawn as a quest artifact, mean that they're very likely to be super overguarded compared to their artifact class. So another part of this item being good is the fact that it cannot spawn as a quest artifact, making it very good in many ways. I would say this is a solid 8, yeah. You know, it's not S tier because, you know, it doesn't do that much. It just does everything, and it's, you know, very convenient. Next up is Yon's Legion. In campaigns where the game goes long, the Legion artifacts can be like a pretty niche use to actually just get you like a little bit more value. Maybe like in the Wayfarer or like some other places. Statue of the Legion could be pretty decent, but in most cases, I would say that they're almost unusable. Like, the fact that you actually have to get a hero and just sit there in the castle with the artifact for the sake of using it, that's more investment that you're getting payoff from actually using the artifact altogether, putting it at a solid D tier. Arms of Legion, by the way, increases the tier 2 creature growth, I believe. No, actually tier 3. Fang legs are 2 tier. Next up, we have the Badger Courage. Badger Courage is a really good, nice little utility artifact in the early game. If you get it really early, then it's actually pretty cool. Your units will not be mismoraling. You can have another faction on your army without having the threat of mismoraling quite a bit. It's a really solid artifact that doesn't take up a valuable skill slot as either. So because of that, it goes in the B tier. I would actually treat it very similar to Armor of Wonder. But the difference between these two items is that Badge of Courage can spawn as a quest artifact, and because of that, it can actually be massively overgotten. Okay, you can have like Archdevil spawn on this artifact alone, and that is ridiculous. And it makes the item on average less usable than some of the other ones. So because of that, it's not quite as useful as the Armor of Wonder. So I would put it like about low beta. It's nice when you get it. It's okay. I'm happy to receive this in a black shower. I mean, in a Black Tower or Churchyard or crap, you know, something like that. Next up is a Bird Perception. Now, this item improves your Eagle Eye effect, okay? And the actual text of Eagle Eye is occupies a skill slot on your hero, you know? It's and that's it. That doesn't do anything else. It emphasizes the blockage of your hero's good skills. Detail. It does nothing. Nothing. The only selling part of this item, actually there is a good use case for this artifact. And that is, it can be sacked in the altar sacrifice for some experience. I really am happy to see an altar sacrifice when I have a better perception. Let's go. Next up is the Black Shard. Black Shard is very, very similar to Armor of Wonder. But it's overshadowed by Null Flail. So it is very, very much like Null Flail, which gives +4 attack. Black Shard gives +3 attack. They're the same RT type, so they are as likely, you're as likely to get a Black Shard, but it's like a little bit less useful. But it has the potential to combine in the Armor of the Damned, making it better than Null Flail. I would still usually take the Null Flail. So yeah, I'm basically compared those two artists because they're really, really similar. They are modern arty class. They're very, very common. You get them like all the time from Black Towers, Churchyards, Crypts, and I'm really happy to receive them as well. I would put it A tier at least. Very, very common artifact. You're very relevant in games. Solid, nice, cool. There we go. Next up, Boots of Levitation. Now, they're kind of like angel wings, except they suck. You don't really want to fly over water because the way that it goes, if you're gonna be reaching destinations with Boots of Levitation that make you, if you're gonna be Boots of Levitating across water, then they're probably in reach of a dimension door usually anyway, so you just want the dimension door over instead. If you aren't reaching, then you have to get a boat anyway, so the Boots of Levitation doesn't do anything anyway. It's kind of nice to navigate some small portions of terrain. It makes things a little bit more convenient at times, but honestly, it's not that good. For a relic, you would certainly want it to do more than just that. So it is C tier. Next up, we have the Boots of Polarity. It makes it so it gives you 15% chance for the enemy spellcast to literally not happen. It's good when it takes its effect, but it's pretty bad when it doesn't. So it's hard to validate this item. I would say the item is actually really good and impactful in many of the games that will actually have this item in the template available. By the way, in the latest Horn of the Abyss, this item is not available, okay? It doesn't spawn as a drop, so only specific templates or Shadow of Death has it. And the main downside of the item is that it's a relic, okay? Like, relic slots are really contested. You could get a Tome of Magic, you could get Angel Wings, some ludicrous stat arties from the Angelic Alliance set, you know. You could get something really good as a relic, and this is not like a very favorable item for you to get out of your relic item. You know, if you're doing like a Utopia, you're not really happy to see this. And it's gonna be like very heavily guarded as well. What up? Okay, Kitty is calm. Come here. Happy little kitty. She wants to be on my lap. Okay. So, because of this, the Boots of Polarity belong in beta. They can actually just win you the game straight up, but they also are not very desirable anyway. It's kind of a weird item. Resistance was a weird skill altogether when it was mass available. So yeah. Next up we have the Boots of Speed. Boots of Speed! Now, It got nerfed in Horn the Abyss from giving you 600 moon points to giving you 400 moon points, but it doesn't even matter. It is still the best item in the game. First selling point, it's very easily available. Usually not got it by too many creatures because it's from the minor arty class. You can get it from Churchyard, you can get it from Black Tower. If you get it, you're gonna be like zooming across the map. It is super good. It's literally just extra logistics on your hero, and like the best use case of the logistics as well when you have like an angel on your hero and nothing else. Well, could potentially have some more speedy creatures, I guess. So yeah, really, just the best item in the game, really. There we go. Next up, Bow of Elementary Wood. Another piece of the Bow of the Sharpshooter, along with the Angel Feather Arrows. This gives you instead 5% damage on your archery, which kind of equivalates to 1 attack bonus for your ranged creatures. It's not that impactful. You would usually want something else. Even on the miscellaneous slot, despite it not being in a very contested slot, it's not really that good. I'll put it high C tier. It's usable. It's actually usable, but you usually don't really feel the impact. Next up is the Bow of the Sharpshooter. And damn, this item is nuts. It has a very unique effect that is not seen anywhere else in the game. It lets your shooter shoot when they're blocked. And holy hell, in PvP matches, can you surprise someone? You block their Super Cyclops stack or the L stack, and they shoot you anyway. And you're like, damn. Okay, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's glorious. It lets your shooter take dopes. It makes them absolute war machines. And also, they of course don't take retail despite hitting someone next to their face. Yeah, it is a very nice item. It completely changes the dynamics of the fight or game, even if you were to have one. Your shooters become absolute monsters, and because of that, I would say it is low S tier. Because it's pretty hard to get, you know? Accommodations artifacts are not easy to get whatsoever, so their effect has to be absolutely massive for them to be high in the list, despite being combination artifacts. So there we go. Next up is the last piece of the combination artifact of the Bow of the Sharpshooter. It is the Bowstring. The Bowstring is somewhere between the Angel Feather Arrows and the Bow of Elementary Wood. The selling point of the Bowstring is the fact that it is not a major class artifact like the Angel Feather Arrows, meaning that it's far more easier available for you to get, but it, only gives you 10% damage instead of the 15. I would still say Angel Feather Arrows are better, despite being less available and harder guarded. So yeah, I'll put them low beta. There we go. Next up, we have the Breastplate of Brimstone. Plus 5 power to any hero wielding this item. Really solid, really good. It's a major class artifact, so it's not that easily guarded, but if you need some power in your heroes, then this is your go-to item. It is really good. So I would have it at low A tier. It's nothing special, it's just a very generic item, and that's okay. Next is the Breastplate of Purified Wood. This gives you plus 1 power, but it's a small scale arty. But it usually is a quest artifact, so even if you wanted to get this, you would usually have to fight a bigger god than what it's worth, making it really bad. Its effect is super minimal, it is usually hard to get than what it's worth, and it's not even worth that much, so I would put it even at D tier, alongside like the useless artifacts. By the way, when you get it as a starting artifact, it's actually pretty nice. Having plus 1 power from the get-go of the game can actually influence it quite a bit, but apart from that, it's usually pretty sucky. Maybe low D tier, but like really low D tier. So yeah, let's do that. Then we have the Null Buckler, plus 4 defense, minor class artifact. This is really good. Whenever you get it in the early game, it's usually really easily guarded. You can get it from some Gnolls, from some Imps, some Griffins, whatever you can do in the early game. You immediately pick this up, and every single one of your heroes is going to be having plus 4 defense, as you're going to be getting the army chain to them, and you're going to be taking the fights, and that's absolutely wonderful. You get it on a churchyard, you get it on a crypt, you get it in Black Tower, and you're really, really happy when you see this artifact. A very solid Might RT. I would put it in mid A tier. Very happy to see this pretty much every single time. Next up, we have the Cape of Conjuring. Your Cape slot item, your very generic one. It gives you +3 duration to your spellcast. And actually, I really see this item being undersold. It's really good, okay? It's not like really, really good, but it's good. It's very usable. It lets your like 1 power heroes actually sustain your spellcast. So if you were to slow for 1 or 2 turns, you would actually slow for 4 or 5 on your like Crag Hack that ended up rolling like no power, you know, because he's Crag Hack. It lets non-mage heroes actually become pretty good at using spells, and that is very influential. I'm pretty happy to see this item. It solves a lot of your casting issues very often. Like in Jeebus Cross, you get this item and you're like, damn, I don't need any power anymore. I'm actually solved for casting for most of the early mid-game, and that is valuable. Despite this, it loses in almost all of its value in the late game. In the late game, actually, it does have one also niche use. There's a hero Giselle that can actually reduce your power to 1. And if you have 1 power, then you're probably not going to be casting damaging abilities. You're probably going to be casting buffs, and the only way to sustain them would be with a Conjuring item, and Cape of Conjuring would usually be your go-to choice. So, you know, if you're fighting a Giselle, this also is probably a late game keep. Just so you know. Next is the cloak that prevents tiers 1 and 2 spells from being cast on the battlefield. And this item, I hate this item, okay? You like get it at the top, or you get it like from a random outcome, you pick it up, and you know, it auto-equips because you don't, you know, because you maybe don't have a cape, and then you go into the next fight, you click that expert slow, and then Cape of Silence prevents levels 1 and 2 spells from being cast. And then you have that oh no moment, oh shit! Okay, this item has ruined a few games for me. Now, that is from my own carelessness. Nobody is at fault. No, this item is not at fault. I'm at fault. But fuck this item anyway, okay? I am very biased against it. In terms of actual practical use, it is pretty good for mages to stop Might heroes from tempoing, you know? Whenever you're facing a Crag Hack or like some Might hero, Tyraxor, they probably will want to haste up or maybe slow you or maybe both. They'll maybe want to shield up. Stopping them from having those temple casts from happening is really good, as you're going to be impulse spamming them or something like that, you know? So it does have its practical uses, but it doesn't actually see that much use. So I would put it at C tier. I think it's very comparable in usage to Cape of Conjuring. Actually, I would say Cape of Conjuring is a little bit more usable. More applications, actually useful outside the final battle as well. Next is the Big Daddy of all capes! Cape of Velocity, major class artifact, okay? So it's gonna be like decently guarded. You can get it from like a mansion. You can get it, of course, with a medium kind of guard, you know. This shouldn't be too hard to do. But this item is so good. It activates every single one of your side heroes, for example, to being able to do pickets. The way that you do pickets is you speed the wolfies and then you just kill all the wolfies because they have like no HP. It lets you take many fights that you would be suffering losses in, basically without losses. It honestly feels like having perma expert haste. Of course, it's like way less speed, but honestly, that's what it feels. And everybody having that speed and the final battle, you can reach new speed thresholds to outspeed your opponent, to be able to cast first, to be able to set up some combos. It is very good. I would put it at S tier. Such an amazing artifact. Super nice. Next is Cards of Prophecy. +1 luck. It's like Magic Courage in many ways, okay? It has a similar effect, except it's worse because luck has worse on morale. And then also it can be a quest guard, so you can actually fight a really big guard for this, you know. There was once upon a time where there was like 2 small arties being guarded next to each other, like a Black Shard, I think, and like Cards of Prophecy, and it was like lots of Medusas. Okay, 2 small artifacts. On the Jeepers Cross, they have like weak monster strength in their biomes. So I'm like 20 Medusas. Okay, let's clear that. It was like a shortcut too. And then it was 49. Okay, 49. And you know why? Because somebody elsewhere in the other part of the world wanted these cards to give me like some demons, I think it was, because I was playing Inferno. Yeah. So the fact that this item can spawn as a quest one, it makes it worse. Also, the effect is not that big, but it's in the miscellaneous slot, so it's not really in contested slots. So if you can equip it, it's like a nice little bonus. So it's usable, but not that good. I would put it at about mid to low C tier. There we go. Next is another relic. This relic gives you +3 to all stats. Necklace of Celestial Bliss. This item is pretty good. It's like about middle of the pack relics, okay? It is literally, I think it would be the first of the good big time relics for you, okay? So yeah, it makes it you have like far more stats. It's not in that much of a contested item slot. It's usually is about tied with Pen of Courage for being the best next slot. It depends on your situation. If you have like low stats, then you can actually need the stats of the Necklace of Celestial Bliss, and you wouldn't really prefer the Pendant of Courage. But then late game scenarios, when you have like a bunch of other items too, Pendant of Courage actually becomes better. But still, this is a really wonderful artifact, part of the Angelic Alliance. Really solid. Almost always happy to see or receive this from Utopia, so by finding guards or however else I work to get it. Okay. Next up is the Central Axe. +2 attack to your hero. Very simple artifact. But not simple in the sense that it spawns, okay? Despite being a low tier artifact, usually having low guards, it can spawn as a quest artifact. And that is bad. So minor effect, possible downsides. It is honestly just C tier. It's somewhere along the Cause of Prophecy. A little bit better, I would say. You can spawn with the Centralized, then you're pretty happy. You have immediately some might going for you. And that way it can be nice, but honestly it's pretty bad. Next is one of the Horn of the Abyss new items. This item goes in the miscellaneous slot and introduces enemy power in combat by 10%. On its own, it's like, it doesn't do that much, but then again, it goes on the ring slot, so you get like some extra bonus from your ring slot. Oh, I mean miscellaneous slot, sorry. So yeah, you get some extra bonus from your miscellaneous slots. Nice, decent. But if you were to pair this with Esper Interference and the other interference artifacts, you can bring your opponent's power from like 30 to like 6. And damn, that feels good. So with a full interference artist and the skill, this is a really good pair. On its own, it's kind of okay too. From example, from 21 power, with this item alone, you will bring him down to 18. So 21 to 18 from your minor RT ring slot. Decent, good. But only good in final battle. It's not useful throughout the game like most of the other artists are. And because of this, it goes in the low B tier. There we go. Next up, we have the first piece of the Wiz as well. The Charm of Mana. Charm of Mana gives you 1 mana per day, which is unfeelable. It's pretty useless. The only redeeming quality of this item is that it's pretty cheap in the black market to buy, and it's actually pretty useful to buy just for the sake of sacking it and an outright sacrifice even. It's that cheap. Second redeeming part of it is the fact that it combines into the Wiz as well. A really, really good utility item, especially in the mid to late game, or early game too. That item is like wonderful any time of the game. So those are the two parts that make it not garbage, but despite not being garbage, I wouldn't give it more than mid C tier. There we go. Next up is the Cloak of Undead King. Okay, this makes me think Sandro, this makes me think the Shadow of Death campaign. It lets you raise leches from your necromancy. It's the combination artifact that everybody strives for, that everybody loves. In online PvP, it is not available unless you're playing a meme template, which I usually do like to do once in a while. But despite this, at least sees low use. But if you were to use it, it's really, really, really good and a lot of fun. It goes into S tier, but it's not like high S tier because it's low. Because it's represented really rarely. And even in the meme templates, usually Diplomacy can actually overtake a Cloak of the Undead King in terms of value and speed in which you grow yourself. But nonetheless, this is my rating. Next up, we have the Clover of Fortune. Clover of Fortune is... It's literally... No, I cannot tell if there's a single difference between Clover and Fortune and Cards of Prophecy. I can't think of one right now. So whatever I said towards the Cards of Fortune applies to Clover. I mean, to 4 cards applies to the Clover as well. So there we go. Next up is the other Conjuring RT. Second part of the Seer's Ring. The color Conjuring, making your spellcast last 1 turn longer. It is very much like the Gamer Conjuring, but it occupies like a slightly more contested item slot. And also, it gives you only 1 extra turn of casting instead of 3. It can still be wonderful if it doubles your casting duration, you know, from like 1 power, 1 turn slow to like 2 turn slow or 2 turn haste. It can be influential like in the super early game, but apart from that, it's like pretty bad. I would put it like bottom C tier. Next up is the Cornucopia. This artifact is a combination artifact of all the resource generating OTs, and then the extra effect is that you get 2 of every single resource that comprises the artifact. That's only precious resources, by the way. It's bad. It's bad. You never actually assemble it, and if you were to assemble it, there's too much investment for what it gives. I would say it's a failure. I would give it a D tier, okay? Like, compared to also most of the other items above, it's like way better. But the fact that you actually have to assemble like a hard-seeming pile of garbage set of items in order to make something that's not even that good, it's... No. It's bad, okay? Next up, we have the Crest of Valor. Once again, it's basically a duplicate RT of the Badge of Courage in pretty much every way. It's kind of nice you can actually have equip like 2 small morale RTs to boost your morale. Plus 2 morale is almost expert leadership for your hero if you were to get like both, you know? So the fact that there's 2 different ones is actually like good, but you know, they're the same. They're the same. Next up, we have Eve, or better known as Dragon of Dragon Crown. Let's just call it Dragon Crown. There's something with Eve there too. Anyway, +4 power, +4 knowledge, Relic. This is the worst of the item head slot relics, but it's still decent. It's 8 stats, but it's like the fact that it's a relic makes it pretty bad, you know? For a relic, you're really expecting the item to do more than that for you. And because of that, I would say that it's not very desirable, but still decent if you get it, you know? Depends on how much you invest to get it. And usually you have to invest a lot for not that big of a payoff. So I would put it a high B tier. There we go. Next up is the Horn of the Abyss Edition, the Naval Helmet. That's not what it's called, but let's call it the Naval Helmet. +6 knowledge, and that's amazing, okay? It's a major class artifact, meaning that it's not a relic, and a major class artifact giving 6 knowledge is really, really good. It is the best major class helmet, putting it at a solid bottom of A tier. Really nice item. I like it. Whenever I see one, I'm pretty happy. In my biome, I know that my knowledge, whenever I see it in the biome, I know that my knowledge issues are fully covered if I were to chain it, and that's really good to know. Next up is the Ogre Crown. Now, Ogre Crown is minor class artifact, making it a lot easier to get than the Crown of Dragon Thief. But also, it has another selling feature. It is part of the set Iron Fist of the Ogre, which is a new set from Horn of the Abyss, by the way. That set gives you... So I'll go over what it does when I get to the item. But anyway, the fact that it comprises that item is also like really good. It gives you +4 knowledge. It's a really solid helmet for your early to mid game. Really good to give the side heroes just for them having mana. It's something that you really do want to get from your church arts, from your black towers, and so on. So because of that, I would say it is solid B tier. Solid B tier. Dead Man's Boots. This item is kind of like, if you were to make Luck of the End of King in the campaign, then this item is like really good. But unless you're playing Necro, it's not that good. It gives you 7.5% Necromancy, nerf from the 15% of Shadow of Death, and it can, you know, it's Necro items are kind of weird. I would not say they're that good. Even if you're playing a Necromancer, unless you're like in the early game, chaining army from one Necromancer to the other, you're not going to be getting that much value out of them. And because of that, I would say that they don't really belong in more than C tier. Maybe a little bit lower in the C tier. That's about where I would put it. Next up is the Demon Horseshoe. And that's really good. That's a really good item. It is a money item. It is -1 luck to the opponents. And minus luck is actually like a really underrated layer of defense, okay? You have like multiple layers of defense, okay? First of all, you have your defense skill of the unit that is that gets your defense skill of the hero out at the top of it. That's one layer of defense. Then another layer of defense is your armor skill, potentially. Another layer of defense is shield, okay? And through these three layers, you're really tanky. But if you can add another layer now in Horn of the Abyss, and that is minus luck, and that is amazing when you do get it. And because of that, I would actually put it alongside the effects of the Immorality still. And also, I don't think this can spawn as a quest artifact, so that actually is another selling point of it. So I would actually put it at like B tier. It's really solid, really good. I always love using this item. I am always happy to see it. Next up is we have the Diplomat's Cloak. This is the combination artifact of all the Diploatis. And this item is very nice, okay? It makes your army appear 3 times larger in terms of AI value. And because of that, everything is gonna be intimidated by you and run away. So, actually, you can basically collect almost everything in the game without taking a single fight, because everybody will flee you and your tremendous army. You have to have some army at the start to actually start using it, but it's really solid. That part of it is actually really underrated. The fact that nobody fights you is really cool. It can also be applied for diplomacy as well purposes, because everyone is intimidated. They are actually more likely to join. Well, I mean, if you have like a good enough army, then it doesn't actually increase the likeliness that anything will join. It's pretty complicated. I'll probably go over like the diplomacy mechanics in a different video. But anyway, this item is like pretty solid if you were to get it. The bad part of it is because is the fact that you have to collect like low tier artists in the beginning to actually get it. So it's not very desirable road to actually get this item. But if you were to get a situation where you can get it, it's pretty decent. And also it's only usable in the mid game. In the late game, everything you can fight everything anyway, and everything would flee you anyway. So it's only good for the mid game, and it's pretty niche. Putting it in low B tier, in my opinion, despite its pretty nice usages. Next up is we have the Diplomat's Ring. All this item does is reduces your surrender cost. That is not good enough to warrant an item slot on your hero. The only selling part is that it makes into the Diplomat's Cloak, putting it alongside the sash in mid C tier. There we go. Next is the Iron Greaves. Nice. +1 knowledge, +1 power, and it's treasure class artifact, right? So very easy gods usually for this. You can start it as your starting artifact. You can get it from a treasure chest. It can actually even spawn unguarded. It's really good. You can just pick these up and they're like pretty good. Like this item alone, the reason I call it pretty good is because this item alone can actually get your like Crag Hack to be able to sustain spellcasting just through this item alone, you know? You like pick up 1 Goddess of Revelation and you get this artifact. You have 30 mana and 2 power. You can cast 6 slows with 2 power each. 12 turns of actually sustaining a spellcast. And that's good enough for your break, for maybe that big conflict that you want to take, to actually get you going. Really solid artifact. You really want to see it on Luna. Yeah, I like it. Easy to get. Has like pretty good use. I would say it's actually very similar to the Call of Conjuring in many ways, but probably a little bit better, because it actually gives you some more mana as well. So its usage is less niche than the Cape of Conjuring, because Cape of Conjuring is only useful to the Mind Heroes to actually activate them. Meanwhile, Ironborn Greaves is usable by mages as well, so that's why it's better. Next up, we have I heard people call this day scale armor. He probably had a meme towards it. Anyway, Dragon Scale Armor gives you +4 power, +4 attack and defense skill. It's a relic item, so it's really hard to get. You have to do your tubs for it or fight really huge gods. But when you do get it, it's really good. It is the second only item on your torso slot that actually gives you might skills. The other one being the Armor of Wonder, so it's not really competing with that because it gives so far more. So if you have Orb of Inhibition in the game, or if you don't really have that many spells, or if you're just taking fights on the side heroes, this is a really far superior item to whatever else you can actually have on your chest slot, you know? And because of that, I would say it earns a solid A tier. Somewhere here. There we go. Next is the Dragon Shield. +3 attack, +3 defense. It is the second only item in the game that actually gives you something apart from defense alone. So that's really good. It's a major class artifact, so it's not too hard to get, but it's like decently challenging. You cannot like get it from a churchyard or black tower or something like easy like that. But usually whatever guard is guarding this in the early game is usually pretty worth it to take the fight for, because the stats of this artifact is really nice. It is somewhere alongside the crown over here, which is also a major artifact. So there we go. Next up, we have the Tabard. +2 power, +2 knowledge in your cape slot. It is a minor artifact, so it's like really easy to get. You get it from churchyards, black towers, crypts, stuff like that. Really good. This is one of the best artifacts. So like, okay, I am almost as happy to see this as I'm happy to see the Boots of Speed whenever I finish that church line. It's really nice. It's like Dragonborn Grease, but doubled. Whatever might hero you're playing, the Tabard is going to be making them into a solid mage. Basically an elementalist from the very get-go. And that is super solid, very useful for mages in the late game, to activate might heroes in the early game. Always, across the board, really good artifact that is also pretty easy to get. I would say it is even S tier, but low S tier. Next up is the Elixir of Life. Oh man, what an exciting item. It increases your HP of units by 25% on top of the normal HP bonuses from the components. And this item makes your angels into archangels, not literally, but because, no speed. But in terms of HP, it does. And, it makes you sustain damage, like, really effectively. It gives you regen, 75% HP regen at the start of every single round of your units. So, yeah. Really solid, good artifact. It wins so many late game fights. It is very game defining. Whenever you actually get the access to this item, you should immediately assemble it. It is super solid. Also, it is made up of pretty easy to attain artifacts, like 2 minor artifacts and 1 major artifact. It's not hard to assemble, and the fact that it's not hard to assemble but still has this ludicrously good effect puts it solidly in the S tier, in my opinion. I would say it is more usable than above the Sharpshooter even. So there we go. Next up, we have the Emblem of Cognizance. It is Eagle Eye artifact. Eagle Eye is nothing but a meme. A pretty good meme, but a meme! Get in there. Actually, let me do this. We're gonna be calling the last tier of artifacts instead of D tier. We're gonna switch it over to Altar of Sacrifice tier. Okay? I would say that would fit far better for this tier. So there we go, we have the Altar of Sacrifice tier. Solid. Next up, we have the free bags of gold, okay? We have the endless bag of gold first. It is a relic, okay, meaning that you can get this from your Utopia in the relic item slots, and you're very sad to see this. Because of this, it gained the title of Endless Sack of Shit, okay? And that is a very solid title for it. It is, you don't want to see this, ever, okay? Very bad. The selling point of it would be the fact that it can actually assemble into the Golden Goose, and also 1k gold can be pretty decent, okay? But you usually get this from taupes, okay? And taupes give really high gold. By the time you're doing taupes, gold is no longer gonna be an issue for you. So for you to get the bag of gold at that stage of the game, by the time you're doing taupes, it's like super bad. That's the opposite of what you want. And that's why it is regarded as such. Next up is we have the endless purse of gold? Sack of gold. No, this is the sack. This is the purse. Yeah, this is the endless purse. This is a pretty small artifact. Gives you like some gold income. I would say it's actually usable. It is really, I don't know. I would say it's less bad than the endless bag of gold. It's bad at giving like way less gold. And the reason for that is just the fact that it's actually reasonably guarded. And you don't get it in Utopias. I mean, you can get it in Utopias, but not like in the important item slots. And because of this, I would actually say that it's possibly usable. And then this is a major class artifact, the Endless Sack of Gold. 500 gold per day. Does not warrant it to be anything above literally bottom C tier. But, you know, major arties are, you know, you don't get many random major class artifacts. There's not many things in a game that produces random outcomes from major arties. Because of that, whenever you actually go for a sack of gold, you're usually knowing what you're going for. And relics are far more usually gained as random artifacts, making it far worse to get it like this. So there we go. These are the rankings for the gold items, in my opinion. Next up, we have the equestrian gloves. Now, these are like boots of speed, except they're halved, but they're in the ring slot. And whenever you have like boots of speed and gloves, you are the fast. You're so fast as you feed across the map, and it feels so good to use. This item is solid S tier. Certainly one of the very iconic items that you always want to see in your biomes, on your heroes. Very, very good. Also, in North the Abyss, it was nerfed from 300 moves to 200 moves, but even then, it is very, very amazing. So, here it is. Next up, the ever-flowing Cape of Crystals. This is a major class artifact. It occupies the cape slot. It gives you 1 crystal per day income extra on top of what you would regularly have. And that is not a good enough effect to actually make a major class artifact. It is Altar Sacrifice tier, and this applies to every single resource generation item that is major. So that's going to be including the Mercury Vial, +1 Mercury per day on a major class artifact. How about Altar Sacrifice? Every smoking ring of sulfur, every smoking ring of Altar Sacrifice, okay? There we go. These solidly belong there. Next is the Garniture Interference. This is a small, it is a minor class artifact. It is going to be preventing 5% of opponent's spellcasts and making them not happen. That is not very good. I mean, it's decent if it happens. It can be game defining. But you don't really count on it. I would usually sack this in Altar Sacrifice unless I'm looking to complete the combination item, Pendant of Reflection. It is not very good. It is usable, but not much more usable than the things at the bottom C tier. Also, it doesn't usually, it only is usable in the case of the final battle, but by the time of the final battle, you usually have more impactful things to equip in your next slot. And because of that, it's pretty bad. Not very usable at all. Next up is Glyph of Gallantry. This is another copy of these two items over here. They belong together. They get +1 morale. They're treasure class, and they can be spawned as quest artifacts. So another one to the list. Next up is the Golem Bow. Now this is the younger brother of the Bow, the Sharpshooter. But damn what a good brother this is, okay? And let me tell you why it's actually possibly better than Bow the Sharpshooter. Very usually you don't actually get to farm up every single item in the game before the final battle occurs between players. And Golden Bow is just a major class artifact, meaning that it doesn't have to big up a guard to actually get it. You can just straight up find it on the road, guarded by some griffins, some trolls, you know, something like pretty easy. And then you have no longer range penalty. So when your Cyclops on Cyclops action begins, your enemy will quickly notice, wait, damn, he's dealing double my damage. I have to do something. And by the time they realize that, they have already lost. Golden Bow is really, really good in the final battle of PvP. It can be very surprising, and yeah, that's pretty solid. I personally really underrate this item. Whenever I see it in the biome, I'm like, okay, I guess it's a Golden Bow. Because I don't feel like it does much versus AI, and I don't really like items that are exclusively for the final battle. So that's why I personally undersell this. I don't really like this item too much, but nonetheless, I can accept its worth as a really decent, good artifact that is relevant in many, many games. Still, it's not as amazing as Bow Sharpshooter, so there it is. Next up is the Golden Goose. Now, Golden Goose is kind of a meme, okay? I would have put it in almost Altar Sacrifice a little while ago, but I started playing like a lot of more meme match, more nostalgic matches, where I use like one hero, or I go for Black Dragons, you know, stuff like that. Like really, really fun things. And honestly, when having fun, Golden Goose is a very vital part of it, okay? A very, very welcome part of having fun. And because of this, I started to love this item. Many will disagree, but when you assemble this goose, okay, it's gonna be in low B tier. There we go. Now, usually you don't assemble it because you sack the individual pieces in Altar Sacrifice. But when you don't, then, you know, it's kind of cool. And next up, we have the Null Flail. I'm having a really hard time deciding what's better, the Black Shard or the Null Flail, okay? Because they're almost identical, okay? Null Flail gives +4 attack, Black Shard gives +3 attack on the sword slot, weapon slot. But they're both minor class artifacts, so they are attainable in identical ways. But the selling point of the Null Flail, it gives more attack. The selling point of the Black Shard, it combines into Armor the Damned. But Armor the Damned more often than not doesn't happen, and the +1 attack usually overcomes the Black Shard. So there we go. Also, I guess the attack is usually more relevant than defense, so more like this. This seems better. Next up is the Statue of the Legion. It is, as I said, Statue of the Legion usage is usually not really worth it, okay? One tier 6 unit per week with like a pretty major investment. You know, if you were to get this item, you're usually just looking to sacrifice it for the sake of XP on some specific hero. It is Altar Sacrifice there. There we go. By the way, actually, bag of gold would be at the top of this. That looks better. Next up is the Hellstorm Helmet. It is very, very much like the Naval Helm, okay? Except it gives 1 less knowledge at 5. It's a major class artifact, so the gods are not that easy for it. Actually, quite a bit harder than it is to get Crown of Supreme Magi. And considering how much more effort you have to put into getting this helmet, for 1 extra knowledge, it's not really worth it. So it is most definitely below the Crown of the Ogre Crown. Because of this, I would say it is about mid B tier. There we go. Next up is the Helm of Chaos. Helm of Chaos is, you know, just 1 less knowledge than the Crown of Supreme. The Crown of Supreme Magi. That's what it's called. I remember now. And also doesn't combine into any combination artifact. And you see, while this knowledge doesn't sound that much, and I even said it's not that much when comparing these two artifacts, but when you go from like 4 to 3, that is like a decent percentage less mana that you actually get from it. And also doesn't combine into anything. So I would actually say it is quite a bit lower in the B tier, even lower than the Helm of Chaos. I would usually be happier to see the Helm of Chaos rather than a Hellstorm Helmet rather than a Helm of Chaos. But they're very, very similar, I would say. Next up is we have the best artifact in the game. Possibly, okay? Not always, but very usually. There we go. We have the Teapot, the granddaddy of all Angelic Alliance items, the biggest item in terms of stats in the game, And it's on the helm slot, so it's like in a very non-contested item slot, gives you that many of various types of stats, plus 6 all primary stats. Absolutely insane. This item can turn everybody into a super good hero. It is solidly in the top of A tier. Very cool. And next up we have the Ogre Club. One of the parts of the Iron Fist of the Ogre. And also gives you plus 5 attack as a major slot artifact. I would say it's actually worse than the Null Flail and the Black Shard, because for 1 or 2 extra attack you have to take like a way bigger guard, and this item is like far less available than those other two, and it's hard to get. Despite being hard to get, it's still pretty good though, and I would put it at low A tier. You're still really happy to see this. There we go. Now, Helm of Old Bastard Unicorn, it is basically like Breastplate of Certified Wood, but it's better, because knowledge in the early game is better than power, because being able to actually cast the stuff you want to cast is quite a bit better than it actually doing like slightly bit more, because usually it's in the base value anyway. So yeah, it is also C tier, but it is higher in the C tier. Not that much higher, but there we go. Next up is the Hideous Mask. And Hideous Mask is an amazing item, okay? You know how Spirit of Oppression back in the days was one of the only ways to prevent the opponents from moraling? Well, how about in the modern day, Horn of the Abyss, we have an item that is minor class, meaning that it's easy to get. You get it like all the time, everywhere, and it reduces the enemy morale by 1. And you know, how much morale do AI usually have? 1! So it actually, this item alone solves almost every single one of your morale issues when it comes to actually opponents moraling on top of you. It makes you so much safer, it makes you so much more consistent, and it's only in the miscellaneous slot and it's easy to get. It is wonderful, super wonderful item. Bottom, well, I would say top of 8 there. There we go. That seems very solid. Next up we have the Horde of the Abyss. Super niche, basically available in the campaign or some really meme maps and or templates. This item, when you can use it, is like basically Armor of the Damned. It lets you generate infinite armies really consistently, really well. It's super strong. It belongs alongside Armor of the Damned in my opinion. There we go. Next up is the Hourglass. It removes any possible positive luck effects from the game from happening altogether. It is not so good, you know, because AI doesn't have luck, so you don't really prevent it from AI, so it's actually only useful against players, but against players they usually don't have luck anyway, and you also have your luck that you don't really want to prevent. It is way too niche, way too bad. It is solidly at the top of Altar Sacrifice tier, so there we go. Next up we have the Carnivore and the Card of Lumber. Now these are exactly what you not want to get from your Black Shard, from your Black Tower and Churchyard. They are very bad. They basically do nothing for you. They could be decent in like some very niche scenarios. Sometimes you're not that sad to get it. I wouldn't say you're ever happy to see these. Sometimes, though, you could be like a little bit less sad to see these. That's as much credit as I would give it, okay? And that's giving it a lot of credit already. So I would say they belong in bottom of C tier. You usually would sack it in the Altar Sacrifice, but like, I want to leave these for specifically super tragic items. Next up, I talked a lot about the Iron Fist of the Ogre, right? This is made up of all these Smorg artifacts. And this item is really nice. At the start of the combat, it would cast Expert Bloodlust, Expert Haste, Expert Counter-Strike, and Expert Fire Shield on your units at the start of the fight. And that's super solid, really good. It makes your units into very super damaging Smorg machines that will just run in there and wreck shit. But it has some flaws, okay? Usually they're not really that, it's not really that easy to get because it requires some major artifacts, unlike the Armor of the Damned, and also its effect is not as impactful as Armor of the Damned because debuffing enemies is usually more beneficial than buffing your own stuff. So yeah, it's not really easy to get in the early game, so you can't really abuse tempo off of it, and it's not really that good in the late game because it gets overshadowed by the Angelic Alliance pieces instead. So in that case, it falls like into a very, very bad middle, making it not that usable. You don't usually see this item in the game, despite of how cool and actually thematic it is. I love this item, but it belongs in the bottom of 8 in my opinion. Next up, we have the Later Bird of Luck. This item is identical to the other 2 luck arties, so we put it alongside those 2. Next up is we have the Liza Legion. Tragic, does nothing, not worth the investment that you actually have to put in it in order to receive the benefit, so it is altar sacrifice there. Next up is we have the the Lion Shielded Courage. What an iconic item, okay? With the griffin inscribed in it. And this item is very, very nice, okay? I would say it's one of the best looking artifacts in the game. And you're always very happy to see this. The best shield in the game. The best slot artifact. Certainly super, super good. It belongs in the A tier. It is not quite the teapot, but it is almost a teapot. So it is below, but still super relevant. Next up is the Lords of Legion. Same case as the other Legion artifacts. There we go. Next up is the Mystic Orb of Mana. It is basically identical to the Charmer Mana, but gives you 3 mana per day, which is the amount that could start getting relevant, so it's like a little bit better, but I would say that it's not more relevant enough. So the benefits and the downsides of the item are basically the same. The benefits is the fact that it's cheap in the black market, it comprises the wizards as well, and the downsides is the fact that it doesn't actually do enough to be a good standalone artifact on its own. So there we go. Next up is we have the Necklace of Dragon Thief. That is a really, really solid item. A major class artifact giving you +3 knowledge, +3 power. Really, really solid item in most scenarios. Of course, it gets outdone by Pendant of Courage and Necklace and the Celestial Necklace in the late game. But in the mid game, this can be a solid foundation for your hero's casting needs, okay? A really nice artifact to get very usually. I would say it is A tier. Very cool arty. Next up is the Necklace of Celestial of Ocean Guidance. It's cool. It's cool. It gives you more movement on sea. For sea maps, it's actually really relevant and pretty cool. You would usually like to get it, but you know, it's not the best. I would put it at B tier. Next one is really cool. Necklace of Swiftness. This is one of more overpowered items in the game, okay? Let me tell you all about it. Plus speed, it's no surprise. The speed is really, really relevant in Heroes 3, okay? And Necklace of Swiftness is super nice because it lets you reach new thresholds of speed that lets you take fights that you otherwise could not take. For example, if in Jibishkar's biome you get Necklace of Speed, on Castle, okay, you get it on Castle, then your marksman can actually outspeed the wolfies in the picket. You know, wolf raiders in the picket are gonna be getting outsped and killed immediately by marksmen before they even move, and that is super nice. It lets you take objectives that you otherwise would not be able to take, and there's many examples of actually where speed lets you take fights that you otherwise could not take. Super, super cool. And the best part of this item also is the fact that you can get it as a starting item. You can get it in some of the early objects like crypts and stuff as well. So it's very easy to get. And for something that is this easy to get, its effect is absolutely massive. Really, really good artifact. It is S tier. Nice. Next up is the Orb of Driving Rain. Now, Orb of Driving Rain is the worst of the orbs, okay? It is basically used exclusively to boost the damage of your Magic Arrow, but Magic Arrow damage boost for a major class artifact is not a good enough usage to actually make it good. I would put it at C tier. It is usable, but no, you don't really want to use it. Next up is the Orb of Inhibition. Orb of Inhibition is it's very game defining. if the item exists in the game, like it being available and existing in the game, it's gonna define the way that you play up until the final battle. It's gonna be deciding what kind of heroes you build, what kind of skills you pick, and yeah, almost everything that you do in general. Most templates don't have this, but for example, Empty Firewalk has this, and because of that, you never pick interference. That's one rule. Another one is that you have to build mages for supports, but they cannot be your main. Otherwise, you will probably lose. And you know, it introduces new rules to the game. It is very super influential, but it's not very good. It's not very fun. I would say it is honestly B tier. The item is not, you know, by the way, for anyone that is not aware, this item prevents any spellcasting from happening in a battle. If this item is present, no spellcasting at all. So, you know, you just have to brawl it out by that point. So yeah, not very exciting, but very game defining nonetheless. Next up is the Orb of Silt. The Orb of Silt is the best of the orbs, okay? It increases your meteor shower damage, and increases your implosion damage, and it can give you that edge, you know? Very many games are actually come down to like Implo versus Implo, you know? You just like blast each other to smithereens and see which one actually dies last. So yeah, in those kind of cases, Orb of Silt can actually be very, very game defining, and this item is very impactful, but then again, it's usually not that impactful before the final battle. Despite it looking pretty good, I would say that its uses are actually more niche than you would think. So because of that, I don't want to really put it at C tier. I would put it at about A tier. It is... no... it's not used as much and as effectively as some of these other artifacts. So yeah, I would say it's low A tier. There we go. Next up is the Orb of Tempestuous Fire. Two uses, Armor Bombs and Luna, okay? Now those two scenarios are pretty good, and when you actually do put it to good use, it's absolutely amazing. But those uses do not warrant it more than low B tier, in my opinion. So there the orb goes. Next up is the Orb of Firmament. The Orb of Firmament is also a super nice major class artifact that basically boosts your Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, and Magic Arrow, and those are very popular spells in the early game, ones that you spam like all the time. And because of that, it also is pretty good. I would actually put it at about the middle of B tier. There we go. Very, very nice. Very solid item. Next up is the Orb of Vulnerability, okay? It makes your spells penetrate the magic immunities, and some people misunderstand how it works. Like, it does not make my and your units vulnerable to all spells. It instead makes my spells penetrate immunities. So for example, my Armageddon, equipping this item, would hit the opponent's Black Dragons, but if he were to Arma, it wouldn't hit his own Black Dragons. So yes, you can actually have Arma cast by two different players in the same fight, and one armor would actually hit a unit and the other armor wouldn't. You can actually have those kind of situations. I learned this the really, really hard way. I had like a Orb of Vulnerability, and my opponent had like 7 1-stacks of Black Dragons. He went to fight me, and I knew he was gonna armor, and I was like rubbing my hands like this, you know, oh, he's gonna kill himself, and he just killed me, and that was it. I was really sad. I did research, I cried out, and I realized I was super wrong and uninformed. So yeah, that's how it works. Apart from that little story, the item is actually not that good. It's a relic artifact, so meaning that it's really, really hard to get. And if it's that hard to get, it better be really influential, and it is not. It is not very influential. Many people say that you can actually take topes on Orb of Vulnerability by slowing the dragons and cutting them, but I haven't really put that to good use at all, almost ever. Unless you resurrect your Black Dragons, for example, and other units that would be magic immune. But those are such neat uses. I don't really see it happening like almost at all ever. I would say it is C tier. Not a solid relic. Not a very solid one at all. Next up, we have probably the best necklace in the game. The Pendant of Courage. And it gives you +3 luck, +3 morale, That's like expert leadership, expert luck, all in one item. And it's not even a relic, it's a major. It's pretty easy to get, and holy damn is it effective. It's very, very, very cool. Usually the best in slot item till the very end of the game. Depending on how much you need the stats from the Necklace of Celestial Bliss. But still, the fact that it is that available, and the fact that it's that influential, puts it at S tier, in my opinion. There we go. Now, Pendant of Courage makes you immune to Holy Spell that kills undead units. The spell is never used, so I don't even know this too well. Anyway, this is actually garbage. Now, this item would, some say, would follow that one, but no! Being immune to Berserk can actually put you to really good advantages, you know? For example, in Clash of Dragons, usually the final battle is like a mishmash of like exotic dragons and like a small section of the battlefield just dueling it out. And overvulnerability is usually present, because why not? We have exotic dragons and we have like all relics in the game by that point. And if you have this item, and if you have Expert Berserk, he can actually Berserk all of his units and just get out and let him, destroy himself. So this item can actually win games. It is possibly game defining in very niche scenarios. So it is not entirely alter sacrifice, but still the item is way too rarely used and its usage is way too niche to put it at anything above C tier, in my opinion. There we go. By the way, I shouldn't separate the luck artifacts. There we go. Actually, this seems better. Next up is a very, very cool necklace again. This necklace is the Pendant of Downfall. The Pendant of Downfall is amazing. -2 morale to opposing players. So this actually not only prevents AI morale from happening, it even lets them miss morale. Sometimes it's actually even undesirable. When you're playing Luna, you kind of want things to walk into your walls the way that you actually plan them to do. But still, despite these very possible niche downsides, it is a very solid major class artifact. Pretty easy to get, very much available, and it feels really good to use. If you get it in the early game, you're very happy with that. I will put this item in the A tier, about the power of the Dragon Thief necklace. There we go. Next up is we have the Pendant of Free Will. I think it makes you immune to Hypnotize. Dude, I can't even remember some of these niche items usages, but I think it makes you immune to Hypnotize. It is it's a very good contender for the Out of Sacrifice tier. Goodbye! Into your abyss you go. Here too, makes you immune to Death Ripple. Nobody cares. This is the Holy Necklace. Wait. I'm 100% sure it belongs in the A tier. In the Out of Sacrifice tier, because it doesn't do anything. But yeah, these necklaces are super bad. Next up is we have the Lightning Immune Necklace. And this item actually is actually useful. It's a major class artifact, so the gods actually for it are not easy at all. And the payoff is actually not good enough to make it worth it in most cases. But if you're playing Soulmere and you want to just keep blasting things, this is actually pretty good. Or if playing up against Soulmere and you want to not get blasted. Also, there's a very good combo as well, okay? In the late game, you always want to use one of 3 damaging abilities to actually be damage efficient in terms of tempo and mana cost, okay? And those spells are Implosion, Meteor Shower, and Chain Lightning, okay? So there's a way to actually prevent all 3 from these from being relevant in a final battle. If you were to take a fight and immediately cast Protection from Earth on your army, then Meteor Shower and Implosion are not going to be relevant enough to be cast by the opponent, but then he's going to be having the follow-up option, the other option of casting Chain Lightning. But if you were to equip this, he wouldn't actually have almost any choice of what to cast in terms of dealing damage, and that combo is really strong, but usually not that relevant, okay? We're talking like super late game scenario levels. And even then, he probably would just cast Utility and still be fine. And you invested like a full cast and an item slot in terms of having him, in terms of forcing him to cast Utility instead. which he might have wanted to do anyway, so you never know. So yeah, it's not that relevant, but that scenario I think should be mentioned. So Soulmere, Anti-Soulmere, and super niche late game scenarios. It is good enough to give it C tier, but not anything more than that. There we go. Next up is the Pendant of Reflection. Holy moly, is this a meme combo RT? This artifact is the combination artifact of all the resistance artifacts, and it gives you even extra resistance on top of it, making it very, very likely that you will be negating opponent's spellcast altogether. And because of that, this item is super relevant and very good, but it is no longer available in Home of the Abyss, at least in most templates. I think thank God for that, because this item is not very fair in terms of its instability, in terms of, you know, it's just a very, very wacky item. I would say it is strong, usually, so I would actually give it B tier. I would say I would put it along the boosts that actually make up the item as well. It is pretty hard to get. It contests some of the slots you would not want to get contested, like the cape, the necklace, and the boots, right? The cape and the necklace are pretty important. You're missing out on potential Pendant of Courage and the Cape of Velocity. That's a lot of utility you're leaving out, but still, if you were to get it, it's very cool, very cool. Next up, we have the Pendant of Second Sight, immune to blind, but it's a major class artifact that is way overguarded for what it's worth, and being immune to blind is too niche of an effect for an entire item slot in either the early, mid, or the late game, putting it in a solid outer sacrifice stand. Next up, we have the Pendant of Total Recall. Nobody ever casts Forgetfulness. Nobody ever uses this necklace, except to get experience. So, it's a solid in that department, I guess. Next up is we have a new artifact in Home of the Abyss, the Plate of Dying Light. A new relic introduced to the game, reduces the enemy power in combat by 25%. The biggest interference boost you can have in the entire game. And that is massive, that is absolutely huge. But then again, you're missing out on potentially equipping 12 power of your own with Titan's Cuirass, or +4/+4 from your Dragon Scale Armor. And that is a big thing to give up. But if you were to combo it with all the other interference pieces, then you would basically be making your opponent from like a very mighty mage into basically like a crack hack with like no items. And that effect is amazing. So this item is very good as a set with the other interference parts, but not really good on its own. Because of that, it is like somewhat niche. And I would put it actually alongside the red boots as well. They're very, very similar, both these items actually. Actually, I would say red boots are better because they're not contesting a very, very influential item slot. They can be equipped on their own without you having to give up that much power for the sake of it. And that's why I would actually put these a little bit above. Next up is we have the Power of the Dragon Father. Makes you immune to anything up to tier 4 spells. It also gives you a really good chunk of stats. This item is probably one of the best items in the game, but it has a massive drawback. It's comprised of almost every single item slot in the game, making you equip no utility, making you... It's super hard to assemble, okay? It's like almost impossible, but in the niche scenario that you were to assemble it, you're gonna have like lots of fun. It's like Armageddon's Blade, but you have to run like 10,000 errands to assemble it. So, and yeah, I also have to get lucky to like find every single piece. It's super, super niche, but it's very, very strong. It's amazing. It's cool. It is solid bottom of S tier. The only thing holding it back, of course, it's the fact that it's impossible to actually assemble. Next up is we have the Quiet Eye of the Dragon. This item is actually the most unique item in the game. You know, +1 attack, +1 defense. Like, big whoop, not that unique. But listen here, it is the only item in the game that stacks. You can have 2 of these. Wow. And yeah, that's the only part that's unique, by the way. That's all I meant. It is very, very cool. It is like Armor of Wonder without the magic part, which is very relevant. But nonetheless, it doesn't take up like a very important skill slot in the early game, and it gives you like some meaningful stats. These are meaningful stats, and they usually their impact can be felt while playing the game quite a bit. I would put it at solid B tier. There we go. That's where it belongs in my opinion. Next up is the Regeneration Cloak, the bane of mages, okay? It's like Orb of Inhibition, but even better for the smart player. This is the Mage Bane, the Mage Killer. It prevents any spells above level 2 from being cast and applies to no implosions, no summons, no resurrection, just usually utility spells like slow, shield, haste, and stuff like that. And usually smart players prefer that, even to the Orb of Inhibition. Because of that, I think it is pretty solid in the next to the Orb of Inhibition. These two items basically accomplish the same goal, in my opinion. It influences the game in very, very similar ways. It makes people take very similar decisions based on that, and yeah, that's how it is. Next up is we have the Flaming Sword. I think there's tongue in that sword's name, but anyway. This sword is pretty much like a carbon copy of the Null Flail. So there we go. It is placed alongside the Null Flail, but a little bit lower because you usually want more attack than defense. So there it is, in its rightful place. Next up, we have the Ribcage. The Ribcage, the most unique quality, is the fact that it's part of the armor of the damned item combo. And yeah, that makes it decent. It's a minor class artifact. It gives a few power, 2 power to be exact. And you're pretty happy to receive this most of the time. Not as happy as some of the other artifacts that are higher on the list, but it's still solid. It's a solid little arty. I would put it somewhere alongside the Helm of Chaos. There we go. Next up, we have the Ring of Conjuring. This item is very, very similar to the Cape of Conjuring, except it gives you 2 turns of casting instead of 1. And its usage is also very, very similar. It lets you sustain your spellcast on your like very, very stupid Smorg hero. It makes them quite a bit smarter, and it makes it much easier to sustain some of your spellcasts. Because of that, it takes a very, very similar spot next to the Cape of Conjuring, but a little bit lower, in my opinion. Better than these artifacts, I believe. There we go. Next up, we have the other major class artifact that generates resource. All the way you go into the Altar Sacrifice. You are not worth it. Next up is the Ring of Life. The Ring of Life is real solidarity. The best part of it is that it assembles into Elixir of Life, which is pretty easy to assemble. So the moment that you have one piece, you can actually spot a second piece, and then you are invested in to find the third piece already. It's actually pretty easy to assemble. One of the most assembled items in the game, by the way. Because of that, this item is actually really relevant, and also if you get it like super early and you have it on your like tier 1 creatures, it makes them actually very significantly tankier. When you're taking highs, you can actually feel the impact that you're losing like quite a few less creatures every single time you actually take a fight, and that is very solid. I would put it bottom of B tier. There we go. Alongside that, we shall put Ring of Vitality alongside the Ring of Life. They are a pair. They are identical. So there they go. Next up is we have Ring of Oblivion. This item prevents any sort of raising of the dead. And what I mean by that is Vamps cannot vamp, Enemy Dead is disabled, Resurrection disabled, Archangel Res disabled. Like, corpses are immediately removed from the battlefield, and you cannot cast any of those spells, making every single loss in a fight permanent. And it can be like a pretty good way to stop a mage from like abusing you in some scenarios where they would summon and res and get out. But then again, it is very, very vaguely used. The most notoriously good usage of it would be to stop an undead player from spamming Enemy Dead, because Enemy Dead is the most available source of regenerating your army, and they have it like by the mid game instead of like the late game, like the Esprit Resurrection. So yeah, if you can sash it against undead player, cool, you're probably gonna have some use of it, but even then, it's not gonna be that good because they'll just cast something else instead, and that's gonna be like similarly valued. And your item is gonna be not that well put to good use. I would say usually this belongs in the Altar Sacrifice, but due to your sneak uses, I think it at least belongs in C-tier. There we go. Next up is we have the Ring of Suppression. This item is almost identical to the Hideous Mask. Reduces the enemy morale by 1, except it's on the ring slot instead of the miscellaneous slot, so it's actually a little tiny bit worse. They are gotten from the same ways, they do the same thing, but you usually would like the item to go on the miscellaneous slot instead, because it's less contested by other good things. There we go. Next up is the Ring of the Magi, combination artifact made up of all the conjuring artifacts. The Cape of Conjuring, Ring of Conjuring, and the Collar Conjuring. And this makes your cast last 50 turns longer. 50, okay? So basically, whenever you cast a spell with Ring of Conjuring, it's gonna be lasting for the rest of the battle. Okay? Like, if it expires, then damn, you're having one hell of a battle. I don't know what you're doing. I don't really have those usually. So yeah, it makes you know, so for your low power heroes, this is very influential. But it's not an item that you seek after, because, you know, having like a few power is gonna be tending to your casting needs already, and this is like far overkill from what you need. And for the sake of that far overkill, you have to invest a little bit too much to actually assemble the RTs. Because of that, it's not very widely used. I would say it's just like alongside the Color Conjuring, because it does basically the same thing. Whatever benefit it has over the Cape of Conjuring is basically negated by the fact, by the extra investment that you need to actually get it. So that's that. Next up is the Ring of the Wayfarer. This is like Necklace of Swiftness, gives you +1 speed, but is worse. It's better in the sense that it actually occupies the ring slot, because ring slots are less contested than necklace slots, but it's far harder to get. You cannot get it as a starting item, you cannot get it in treasure chests, this cannot spawn on the ground, not guarded. It's always gonna have like a decent guard for the sake of it. But despite this, going for this item is a really good idea. This is speed in Heroes 3 is one of the best things you could possibly have. That's why Man Saves, Man Slow is so overpowered, and that's why all these items are placed so high. It is a solid A-tier item. Hell yeah. Ring of the Wayfarer. Next up is the Royal Nyx Armor. +7 power. Really, really, really solid. Very good. It's like the Breastplate of Brimstone, except like a little bit better. So wait, where did I place the Breastplate of Brimstone? Here. So it's gonna be solidly in the top of A tier. A sought after item by all the mages, usually not really that much overguarded. Very good item to have. The top of major class. Very cool. Next up is we have the Runes of Imminence. This is the pretty much a carbon copy of the Demon Horseshoe. I've placed Demon Horseshoe over here, so this one goes alongside it. And there we go. These two are together now, the way they were supposed to be. Next up is we have pretty much the weakest of the good Relic class items. The Sandals of the Saint, +2 to all stats. And that's a very good effect. You want these items in the late game because they are the best in slot for your boot slot. But nonetheless, they are not that good because for a relic, they're kind of bad. You don't really want to see them in the top in the early game unless you're like searching for those by that point. So yeah, they're solid, but not that good. I would say they're very much like a Crown Dragon Thief. They comprise the Angelic Alliance, that's one of its main selling points, and you know, decent stats, but not good enough to actually make a relic. So there it goes. Next up is the Scales of Greater Basilisk. This is your very common artifact that you get almost every single game in the early game. This is something that you kind of do like to find from any Black Tower Churchyard. A solid minor class artifact is gonna get you rolling in the game. Pretty cool, pretty nice, and that's why it belongs alongside other B-tier items that are pretty common. So yeah, it's a little bit above the Ribcage. Ribcage of course has the benefit of being a part of the Army of the Damned, but the fact that it has this nice usage does not mean that it's better than the +1 power that the Scales provides. So that is where it goes. Next up is we have the Admiral's Hat that is currently like pretty nicely above the Legion statue, which kind of fits. But anyway, this item is really good. This item prevents you from losing army in whirlpools, which is kind of relevant in water maps, and also makes you move far more in water. Also comprises the Admiral's Hat. It's good, sought after item in water maps, but water maps are way not played. So I don't feel like it's that relevant. It's not very cool either, you know. So it's kind of a boring item. And because of that, it belongs next to its other piece, the Necklace of Ocean Guidance, which I ended up placing in B tier. There we go. Next up is the Seal of Sunset. Seal of Sunset is another new HotA addition, and it reduces the enemy power in combat by 10%. Just like the other small interference HotA, it's also a minor class. So all the good things I said about that item also applies to this one. Really solid, reduces the enemy power by a little bit, good on its own, but also super good if you get every single little part of interference and equip it all. Then the enemy mage or even not a mage is gonna be like completely devastated, and that devastation is worth going for. So actually I would say that it's a little bit worse than the Garniture, because this one occupies a miscellaneous slot, which is less contested than the ring slot. So there we go. Next up is the Aegis Sentinel Shield. Yeah, I think it's Sentinel Shield. Plus 12 defense at the cost of free attack. It's a good item. It's the second best shield in the game. It is a relic, so it's pretty hard to fight for, but you're gaining 9 might stats for the sake of it. It's a very good artifact, but like not the best of the relics. It's outshined by some of the other pieces. Because of that, it belongs not in S tier. Despite being like one of the best items in the game, it belongs in A tier in my opinion. Somewhere along here. This is not the kind of item that you're like really happy to see. You're kind of okay with it. I can accept that. It's a solid relic, but pretty boring. Doesn't do too much. Next up is we have the Shackles of War. This is a very staple item both for PvP and for PvE, okay? Nobody likes a rat, nobody likes retreating opponents, you know? So this is how we enforce our victories. And because of that, this item is very influential. It can literally just win you a lost game by, destroying opponent's plant that don't run you and stuff like that. It is solid in the A tier, despite being a major class artifact that's pretty hard to get, and it doesn't do anything until you actually engage with other players. But despite this, when you do engage with the opponent players, it does so much for you. I would put it pretty highly in the A tier. I honestly did not value this item enough. I would say that I should value this item far more than I currently do. I respect this item quite a bit, especially since I very recently horribly lost to this item as well. Live Giants never forget. So yeah. Next up is we have the Shaman's Puppet. Shaman's Puppet is very nuts. It's so good. It's -2 luck to the opponents, okay? Unlike the other items that give you a -1, this one gives -2. And it's still a minor arty, not even a major. Despite having this huge effect, it's wonderful. It's a very huge extra layer of defense for you. So I would put it, honestly, even at A tier. This item is very good. They should take so far less damage. It's nice. Next up is we have the Naval Shield of Glory. Compared to the Dragon Scale Shield, it gives 7 might stats instead of 6. And it is as hard to get as Dragon Scale Shield as well. So it's gonna definitely go alongside it. And I would say it's better. I would say that free attack is not better than 4 defense, usually. Scenarios might change, but this is where it's at. Also, this item was added in Horn of the Abyss, so if you've never seen it before, that would be why. Next up is we have Shield of the Damned. Literally same as these two, but I would say that free attack is better than the free defense that the Armor of the Damned provides over the Dragon Scale Shield. So there we go. Those are the major shields. Next up is we have the Dwarven Shield. This is gonna go alongside the hatchet. That is where it belongs, okay? This item gives +2 defense. The very good part is the fact that you can get it at the start of the game, or even from a treasure chest, and if you have nothing else, then that extra 2 defense is going to be pretty influential and really nice to get you going. But they can be super overguarded, they fall off really quickly, very easily to replace, they don't do that much for you, so there it is. Next up, we have 2 more Armored to the Damned pieces. Very cool. The Shield of Yawning Dead is going to be going pretty much alongside these items. They are all minor class artifacts that give you like a little bit of stats, you know? And those stats are basically, yeah, it's very much like the Null Buckler, except it gives you 1 less defense, but has the benefit of adding into Armor the Damned. But still, that 1 extra defense, it would be better than the possibility of the Dream, okay? The Dream does happen from time to time, and then like the Shield of Yawning Dead is like way better, but on average I would say it is something like this. Next up, we have the Skull Helmet. And Skull Helmet, very much like these items, just belongs right below the Helm of Chaos. 1 less knowledge than the Helm of Chaos, the same ways to get them, but adds into Armor of the Damned. So yeah, that's how it is. Next up is we have the Speculum, a miscellaneous small arty that lets you scout a little bit further away. Has some niche uses. I actually don't really always sell this to Altar Sacrifice. I feel like if you can keep this, then it's kind of a good keep. It lets you scout something that you otherwise would not be able to see, like the start of a taupe or the start of a consular. Can lead you to find something really influential that you otherwise might have missed. And that potential is really relevant. That's what makes scouting good, of course, and so on. I would say it is not in the Altar Sacrifice, but rather it is in the C tier. And actually, yeah, about mid-C tier. More usable than the Mana Arties at least. And the Spyglass is gonna be the same. It is a mirror copy of the other one, so they belong together. So off they go. Next up is we have the Spellbinder's Hat, and what a big time relic this is, okay? This relic lets you cast tier 5 spells, okay? Every single tier 5 spell in the game immediately becomes available to you in the in any battle or non-battle either, because it gives you air control too. It gives you Dimension Door and Fly, and also Implosion in the battle and Earth Elementals and everything. It is very useful. If you were to have like 1 relic in the game, very usually this would be the best relic you could possibly have. Its main downside is the fact that it cannot be used alongside the Teapot, you know, to cast Implosions. So if your 2 relics is the Teapot and the Spellbinders, then you cannot really equip both of them, and that's like, you know. But apart from that, it's very good. Lets you take the final battle way early, gives you air control way early, and yeah, super solid item. Very good. It is solidly in the S tier. It has very similar things to Angel Wings, but I still think Angel Wings, because it is for free and gives you Expert Fly immediately on everyone for free, it's still like a little bit better. So there those go. Next up is we have the Sphere of Permanence. This item makes you immune to the spell, which is way niche. I almost never see the spell used. If you were to like specifically have the game plan of casting like lots and lots of buffs, and you need the opponent to not dispel in order to succeed, then this item could be pretty good. But then again, usually the opponent doesn't really have water magic, as that's a pretty bad school of magic to go for throughout the game. So because it counters something that usually doesn't exist, it makes it really bad. And because of that, this monoclass artifact belongs in the Altar Sacrifice, most usually. Less so than like some of these other ones, but still. I actually tried using this sometimes, and even then, the times that I got this equipped, I never got any use of it. And not a single time did I ever see somebody could be like, oh yeah, the spell is coming, but then I have this item. No, never, not even once. Next up is the Spirit of Oppression, a multi-class artifact that stops any morals from happening, okay? Now, some people misunderstand this item, and this item does not interfere with your morale stats, okay? If you have negative, it's gonna do nothing for you to get you out of the negatives. And it doesn't stop the positives from applying either to reduce your negatives, okay? So it does not interact with the stat of morale at all, but every single time morale would happen, it just doesn't. Like, the mechanic of positive morale just does not exist in the battlefield anymore when this item is present. So basically, it does what the Hideous Mask and Ring of Suppression do for most battles, except it makes you not able to morale either, not only the opponent. So it's actually like worse than these items most usually, but still very usable. Makes your gameplay far more consistent. You don't get your archer morale upon and so on. That feels like way better to play. Solid item, something that you usually really do want to see. Then next up is we have the Statesman Medal. Now this item reduces the surrender cost, and that's not very good, okay? It's not very good. The only selling part is that it goes into the Diplo Cloak like the Ambassador Sash, so it belongs alongside its brother Ambassador Sash. There they go. And next up is the Statue of the Legion. The combination artifacts of every single piece of the Altar Sacrifice tier. And when you put it all together, it's actually like a little bit usable. No matter where your hero is, you actually get the benefit of the Statue of the Legion, which is going to be increasing your creature growth by quite a bit. 50% was it? And it's... if you can get it, it's good, and in some specific scenarios and mass that go super late game, it's good. It's good when you're playing like versus AI and want really ridiculous armies. But then again, it kind of applies to like meme scenarios, not really when you're playing seriously PvP, or you know, it's kind of like a for fun item. And you know what? It does a good job in doing that, but not as good of a job as the Goose in my opinion anyway. So because of that, I would give it C tier. I'm not gonna put it in the Altar Sacrifice, but you know, I'm gonna keep you, but you're probably not gonna do much, are you? Next up is the Quiet? I don't remember how this item is called. Anyway, the other Eye of the Dragon. And this item is very cool actually. This Mighty Class artifact gives you morale and luck, and it cannot spawn as a quest artifact. So it's like the glyphs or the Glyph of Gallantry, Battle Courage, it's like that, alongside the effect of the luck item. And also, it's usually easier to get. The downside is that it occupies a more contested item slot. The ring slot is more contested than the miscellaneous slot. But still, this puts it at a solid A tier. You're always very happy to see this item whenever you get it from like some small thing. When you get it as a starting item, it's always very solid, very nice. This item is very cool, very influential throughout the games. So there it goes. Then next up is the Stoic Watchman, another Eagle Eye item. On into the bottom of the list you go, sir. You are never used, okay? Never. Not a single person ever used it ever for anything except the Altar Sacrifice. That is an exaggeration. If Mika use it for some challenge, I am sorry. Next up is the the Cult of Counterpoise, something like that. 10% resistance in the Tabard slot. Pretty solid, not that preferable. The main drawing factor is the fact you can assemble it into Bend of Reflection somewhere down the line, but that usage does not warrant it a bigger spot than this C tier. Too inconsistent, not useful enough, only useful in the final battle, and the final battle usage is also pretty limited. So there we go. Next up is the Sword of Hellfire. Sword of Hellfire very obviously goes above, actually like this, above the Ogre Club, because it gives more attack. It has the downside of not assembling into any combo arty, unlike the Ogre Club, but still that one attack is better in my opinion. So there you go. And of course, attack is usually better than defense, so this is also like a thing. Oh, actually then like this. Yes, this makes more sense. Don't look nice tonight like that. Ah, accuracy over niceness, I guess. Next up is the Sword of Judgment. This is also the big daddy of stat items, alongside the Teapot and the Lion Shield of Courage. Into the top you go, your wonderful item. This item is very beautiful. You always want to see it. On the ground it looks very majestic, in your inventory it looks very nice. And whenever you get this, your stat problems are solved and you're very, very happy in the game. Also assembles into the best combo art in the game. Like, it's super solid. Very good. Exactly what you want to see in your taupes. Next up is the Talisman of Mana. The last piece for the Wiz as well. Alongside the Mystical of Mana and the Charm of Mana. Gives you +2 mana every single turn. Not really that good. Good for Altar Sacrifice, pretty cheap in the black markets. Assembles into Wiz as well. That's pretty good, but not good enough to push it anywhere above C. There we go. Next up is we have the last piece of the Iron Fist of the Ogre set. There we go. Below the Ogre Club, because attack is worse. Attack is better than defense. And yeah, it's a major class artifact alongside the other major class artifacts. It is the worst of the might artifacts in the major class, I guess, yeah? So, there it goes. Next up is the Thunder Helmet. At a cost of -2 power, you get the knowledge, okay? And you get a lot of knowledge, 10 knowledge, the most knowledge you can get from a helmet slot or any slot altogether. So, very, very cool artifact for the sake of doubling your mana in the mana vortex. And usually the downside is not really relevant at all because you would recover your mana, then you would disequip the item for something else, you know? So you get the benefit of having like a ludicrously high amount of mana without having the downside. Using it like that makes it pretty good, but then again it's a relic, and as a relic I don't really feel like it does enough to actually be at the top. So rather than being at the top, I would say it's about exactly here between below the might arty, the might major arties. Because it like gets overshadowed by the other relic in the head slot, the teapot, you know? Despite it having its uses, and the uses being like pretty decent, it's not good enough to make it one of the best staple items of the game, like the S tier is currently comprised of. So yeah, there it goes. Next up is the Tyrant's Cuirass. Tyrant's Cuirass is +10 power at the cost of 2 knowledge. Usually this cost is negated because you recover mana without having this being equipped. You double your mana in the mana vortex without this being equipped or something like that. And then you're good to go to use this without the downsides. But then again, even without the downsides, it's better than the Thunder Helmet because it's not really replaced by anything easily. For very, very many scenarios, this is the best in slot chess piece for you. +10 power is the most stats you can gain in terms of the item slot. And because of this, I would say it is at the bottom of S tier. A best in slot artifact for most scenarios, I don't think should be below S tier, you know? So that's why it goes over there. Well, then again, usually the Magic Moralities are below S tier. But then again, the chess piece is way more influential, so that's why. Next up is we have the Titan. Titan's Gladius, the Kuragak's favorite item. And what this means is that you get 12 attack at the cost of 3 defense. Kragak of course has no defense, so there's literally no downside of using this item. Memes aside, this is a really good artifact. And it goes alongside the shield, the Sentinel Shield. It's a little bit above the Sentinel Shield because, of course, again, attack is better than defense in most scenarios. Not all of them. And, yeah, 9 might stats, Relic, pretty solid. Not ideal. It gets replaced by Sword of Judgment very easily, but still, very usable. Next up is we have the Titan's Thunder. Hell yeah. Now, this item is very interesting, okay? It prints spellbooks. It's a very unique effect, and one that is actually not very well recognized. But if you have this combo item, and you equip it on anyone, they get the ability to cast Titan's Thunder, okay? And anybody gets the ability to cast Titan's Thunder, meaning that they get a spellbook. So yeah, this is a printing machine. So what, you can actually go to like a level 30 prison, clear it, and the hero might not have a spellbook, and then you can actually trade him the item, and then trade it back, and he'll actually still have the spellbook. Nice! You don't have to go to a mage guild. apart from this niche use, the actual item is pretty good. It lets your side heroes cast something actually relevant, so it makes your side heroes be able to take fights way better, and can even be good in like a very late game scenario as well, where you just straight spellcast with the opponent. But then again, it's usually overshadowed by the Angelic Alliance pieces instead, which will end up granting you way more stats, and that usually is better than the use case of the Times Thunder. But then again, having this item is like really good utility. Printing spellbooks is actually not to be underestimated. This item is, I think, pretty high A tier. Somewhere here. Pretty cool. Next up, we have the tomes. Now then, let's start with the Earth Tome actually. This is the daddy of all tomes, the one thing we play for, the one thing we strive to see in every single tome. When we see it on the ground, we go, oh, okay. This is the item. It gives you every single Earth spell. It gives you the ability to cast every single Earth spell in the game, and that is wonderful. You need to travel somewhere? No problem. Town Portal. You need to not lose any army ever? No problem. Resurrection. You need to literally remove your army from the opponent's army from the game. No problem. Implosion. It literally covers you for the entire spellcasting that you need to use to win a game, and putting it at a solid top of S tier. I would say just below the Teapot. Now, many people will say this, but honestly, Teapot just feels too good, okay? Teapot is too iconic for me. Then, next up, we have the Tome of Air Magic, the second best tome, giving you full air control atop of a good atop of a good offensive cast of Chain Lightning as well. Not as good as the Tome of Air Magic, but really sought after as well. Dimension Door is the other party control that you want to have apart from the Town Portal. It is very good. I would place it just below the Implosion Hat. These items are very similar because their main drawing point is the fact that you can cast Dimension Door, but of course the Magic Hat gives you the Implosion as well, which is an extra benefit, which is usually better than the Chain Lightning. Also summons to abuse dopes, and so on. Of course, Elemental gives summon steal, but not as consistently at expert level as the Spellbind is at, of course. Next up is the Tome of Fire Magic. The third best tome gives you access to Armageddon, Fire Elise, Berserk, but these are pretty niche casts. These are not the kind of casts that are going to be good for you always every single time, unlike the other two tomes. Because of this, it kind of falls flat. You know, if you're getting a relic, you really want to get some actual use out of it. You want it to be useful, and usually Fire Tome is too hard to put to good use. And because of this, I would actually put it at B tier. It is not better than Sandals of the Saint or the Crown of Dragon Thief. Actually, I would put it at middle of A tier, or B tier, I mean, sorry. Next up is the last of the tomes, the Water Book. You know, whenever you want to meme a bad taupe, you know, to a streamer or something, people will say Water Book the taupe incoming, or Endless Bag of Gold taupe incoming, or both, you know. This is exactly what you don't want to see. It could be useful, okay, in some scenarios. There are templates where actually you want a Water Book, like the Jiba Outcast from MKC, but those scenarios are too rare. Too rare. You belong in C tier. Goodbye. Next up is Swords of the Legion, and surprisingly, this is actually not going alongside other Legion arties, and let me tell you why. There's a very specific use case scenario, and a very good one, honestly. When you're playing Necropolis, there is a strategy to go for Vampire Lords, okay? And the way that Vampire Lords work is that they either win a fight or they don't, okay? There's nothing in between. And because of this, they go in thresholds, okay? You need like this amount of them to clear that, this amount of them to clear the other thing. So getting every single extra Vampire Lord is gonna let you take like a bigger and bigger fight with no losses whatsoever. And because of this, every single extra Vampire Lord matters quite a bit. And Torso of the Legion lets you generate extra Vampire Lords, which is more valuable than anything else you could possibly have at that point. Because of this, it is useful in that scenario. And if it's useful in some scenarios, then I would say it's actually at least C tier. So there you go. One of the Legion items made it, okay? Congratulations. You don't deserve it. Next up, we have the last of the major Might class artifacts. And this is the best major Might artifact in the game. Horde of the Abyss Edition, plus 7 attack. You get this item, you're gonna be destroying things, you're gonna be dealing massive damage, and you'll be happy. The guard for this is also not too hard. It is very solid A tier. Very cool item. I love it. So then, next up is we have the Tunic of Cyclops Kings. Tunic of Cyclops Kings is a major class artifact, usually pretty decently guarded. And it gives like deal less. Basically, it is just below Breastplate of Brimstone. No, actually, I would say it's quite a bit below. That one power does feel influential. It is no below these. Below these as well, actually. I would put it somewhere here. It is decent, but no, actually, it's here. Yeah, it's beat there. It is one of the worst it's one of the worst good major class items. The fight that you have to take for the sake of this is like a little bit too big to make it worth it, in my opinion, most of the time. And because of that, it doesn't rank as high as some of the other major class artists do. This actually doesn't belong to Zai either. Not bad. So this readjustment is in order, in my opinion. Now the list is looking like way better. Then next up is the Vampire Scowl. This is again a too niche of an item to actually be good. It is not very commonly used. It gives you 5% Necromancy, 10% Shadow of Death. And that is, you know, you have to be Necro, you have to be using multiple heroes actually good to make use of it. The only drawing factor of it is the fact that it assembles into Cloak of the Undead King. And because of this, it earns a C tier. It's alongside the Boost of the Damned, despite Boost of the Damned being quite better, but this one is way easier to access and you have to make less investment for it, so like about evens out, you know? That's why. Next up is the Vial of the Dragon. This is also an item that is very rarely used, honestly, for good reason. It's not that good even. Like the effect is pretty cool. It gives your dragon stats, you know, just dragons stats. But for like a big class artifact, that's not enough stats to actually make it that worth it. Also, it's way too niche. Your army is not comprised of dragons almost always usually. It's also not available in most templates, so it's not even that relevant in that kind of aspect. But it's cool, okay? I like it. I'll put it at bottom B tier. There it goes. Next up is the Vial of Lifeblood. The last artifact needed to assemble the Elixir of Life alongside the 2 rings. And this item gives you +2 attack to your units, and that is really solid in the early game. Like your Troglodytes are gonna be receiving, I think, 33% extra health. Like, damn, that's like 33% extra Troglodytes. Well, except for damage. But yeah, really solid on its own, and even way better with the Elixir of Life. I would put it on middle of B tier. There it goes. That's where I would rank it. And next up is the Wayfarer Boots, a major class artifact, so it's not got it that easily, and you don't get it from random outcomes. But holy damn, when you're playing in snow, or you're playing in, when you're farming the desert, when you're playing in snow, in swamp, having these items is like the best thing that could possibly happen. It makes the game so much more enjoyable, so much easier to play, so much more convenient. One of the best items in the mid game when you don't have a way to deal with the terrain penalty in other ways. And because of this, I would say it belongs solidly in the A tier. I would put it about here. There we go. Now, by the way, when these guys get replaced very easily, and they're only valid for like a certain part of the game. Later on they'll be useless, but despite this, I still think they earned their really good ranking. And the last item, the Wizard's Well. This is what these free items live for, to combine into the Wizard's Well, and this item is super cool, okay? It recovers your entire mana pool at the end of every single turn. Infinite mana. Very amazing. Very good for late game. Very good for like mass with low amount of towns like the Gigantic plus Underground. I think that is 8xm8 doubled. And yeah, it's super solid. Very good. I would put it not at S tier because you know, it doesn't do that much. It's convenience, but convenience is not necessarily strength. And because of this, I would put it at A tier. The Wizard Well belongs somewhere here, in my opinion. Really good, but not as game defining as some of the other parts. So yeah, there we go. That is my item tier list for Heroes of Might and Magic 3, HotA the Abyss, current version, okay? You know, this list is personal. I like the items in this kind of way. You probably prefer some pieces over some others. Maybe you value the item like in a void rather than actually, you know, thinking about how easy it is to get or whatever. If you play other templates, you're gonna be having different opinions too. That is all fine. You can share them in the comments. I will be happy to respond to any questions. And yeah, please subscribe, like, comment, and catch me on Twitch. I stream almost every day. So see you there. Bye bye. Till next.